Every year, locals and visitors alike prepare for one of the largest tourist attractions in the Florida Keys, lobster season. Recreational lobster harvesting makes up for about 30% of all commercial spiny lobster harvests and brings in around $24 million annually to South Florida and the Florida Keys. There are two seasons that make up lobster season. Mini season, which lasts 2 days and is the last Thursday and Friday of every July, and regular season, which begins August 6th and ends on March 31st. There are some key components that you need to understand before getting involved. First, the proper equipment. Next, the rules and regulations of lobster season. And last, the consequences of not following the rules and regulations. Proper harvesting equipment is vital not only for harvesting your lobster, but also it helps you stay within the guidelines of lobster season. The first thing you need before you get in the water is a dive flag. The dive flag alerts other boaters and divers that you are in the area. On top of having your dive flag properly displayed, divers must also maintain a 300-foot radius from their flag. The next thing that you will need is a snorkel and mask in order to spot the lobster. Another important tool that you are going to need is a lobster gauge. This device allows you to measure the lobster and ensure that it meets the size requirements of a legal harvestable lobster. This device is usually connected to your next tool, a tickle stick. The tickle stick is used to gently coerce the lobster from his hiding place and into a lobster net. Gloves are an optional tool, but are necessary in order to humanely remove the lobster from the net once it is on the boat. The next and probably most important component of lobster season is understanding the rules and regulations. First and foremost, you need to obtain a recreational saltwater fishing license with a lobster permit. Another important rule pertains to the size of the lobster. The gauge shown earlier assists you in measuring the carapace and the tail of the lobster. The carapace of the lobster begins behind the eyes and ends at the beginning of the tail, and must measure greater than 3 inches. The tail of the lobster must measure greater than 5.5 inches. The lobster must be measured before you possess the lobster, meaning under the water prior to bringing the lobster to the surface. As well as the size of the lobster, the way in which it is harvested is also regulated. Any device that could crush, penetrate, or puncture the lobster is strictly prohibited. Furthermore, the number of lobster per person per day in Monroe County must not exceed 6. This is referred to as the bag limit. However, bag limits depend varying on local jurisdiction, so if you are harvesting in an unfamiliar area, be sure to consult your local law enforcement before you do so. In addition to understanding the rules and regulations, it is beneficial if you understand what can happen if you do not follow the rules and regulations. As stated on myfloridahouse.gov, any violation of any rule of the Florida Fish and Wildlife aimed to protect marine resources is punishable by imprisonment of up to 60 days in jail. On top of serving jail time, you could also pay fines of up to $500 for inhumanely harvesting lobster, possessing illegal sized lobster, and exceeding your local bags limit. On top of those fines, you can also pay fines for molestation of another harvester's lobster trap for fines of up to $5,000. In order to avoid these fines and get the most out of your experience, it is important to educate yourself on the local laws before you get involved. Lobster harvesting is a very fun and challenging activity and can provide food for you, your family, and your friends. So don't miss out and know your local laws.